his words to me that night were, "You've got about 60 days." And it registered with me what he meant. And there was a pause, and he said, "We have to keep you alive long enough to get you a new liver."
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God? Bryan, welcome to When You Look. So great to have you here, man. Thanks a bunch for coming on the show.
No, Mick, thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, we are very, very excited to have you here. Even more importantly, very excited for people to hear your amazing story. Before we jump into that, though, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Bryan Berry. My wife is Ann. We are about to celebrate our 35th anniversary. That's a big point this year. We have two boys, 27 and 30. Our 27-year-old's getting married in August. We recently moved to Charlotte after an entirety of life in Richmond. All of our married life was there. We met at JMU, graduated, moved to Richmond back in 1990 without jobs. So we've got a lot of history behind ourselves. We're excited to be down here. The two boys moved down here 3 years ago, and we were in a position where we were missing them, but actually sought their permission to come down here. We didn't want to come down and have them feel crowded. So that's been great. For about 27 years, I ran an investment advisory practice. I sold that about 6.5 years ago. Got into nonprofit consulting work, some networking, and leadership development. I know that's three sort of interesting things, but I've managed to combine them all into something that's worked well in transferring down here to Charlotte as well. Still sort of an ongoing journey on what that's ultimately going to look like one day when I'm fully grown. But yeah, that's us. We're excited. Excited to be down in Charlotte. Excited to develop some new beginnings, new horizons, new just continuations of our story. And yeah, looking forward to sharing some more about what the past 6.5 or 7 years have been like.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, let's jump right into that. Give us a little bit of backstory on those last 6.5 or 7 years, and then walk us through things from there.
Yeah. Well, so in the world of investment advising and financial planning, you spend your life helping others create these financial plans and reach their goal, to reach their goals for retirement and everything else. And we were no different doing it for ourselves. So in the summer of 2018, we were in a good spot. Our oldest son had just graduated from college. Our youngest son was entering his junior year at JMU. And we were able to do pretty much anything we wanted to at that point. We were traveling more often. My mother-in-law was living with us at the time. We were in a good spot to take care of her as she was going through Alzheimer's, and happy to be able to do that. We were able to build a great place for her to move in. And so during the spring and summer of 2018, we traveled to the Caribbean a lot. We found a new love down in the Dominican Republic and enjoyed being there, and started having dreams about maybe being down there permanently one day. And those dreams are still out there. But you get so busy in life during that time that you kind of, the one thing that I wasn't paying attention to was just my own body. Like I worked out, we did stuff. I mean, I'd be tired, but think we're doing too much. I need to take a break. So we ended up going out to California for a week in July, and I came home just not feeling well. I was just more tired than normal. Again, being a guy, I was like, I'm going to fix this myself. There's no way I'm going to a doctor. I don't need to go. We had our family physician was a good friend of ours, and I was like, well, when I need him, I'll call, but I can just take some Tylenol and fix this, or I just need to rest a little bit, or even in days where I felt lethargic, I just need to go for a walk. From the middle of July till about the middle of August, I noticed a couple of things changing that I couldn't fix. I started gaining weight rapidly, but I wasn't eating. And I would make sure, like, I'm not going to eat, gaining weight, not eating. So I started retaining fluid. I was tired all the time. Just kept trying to push through because that's what we do. And I was too, I guess, not willing to recognize it enough because I had other things I needed to do. Um,
Yeah.
about the middle of August, I moved my youngest son into JMU to start his junior year. And one of the things that was in the back of my mind is like I'm not feeling well, but I'll deal with it once I get him to school. It My thought process was, if you think back to when you were in college, that first semester of your junior year, you were so neck deep in your major course that you just can't be distracted, right? And I didn't want to bother him with it. My older son was trying to start his career. I didn't want to bother him with it, and I thought they're both, once they get going, then I'll go to the doctor and figure out what's going on. So, uh, fast forward ish to the middle of September. My wife was at a skincare conference for something, a side business she had down in New Orleans for the weekend. It was a Saturday morning. I went out to mow my yard. And we live in these neighborhoods where the yards aren't big, right? It takes 20 minutes with the push mower to cut all your grass. About 45 minutes into trying to cut my front yard because I had to continue to stop to catch my breath. I finally went inside, got my older son to come down. I said, "Hey, can you finish mowing? I just need to go in and sit down." And I sat down and I sent a text to my doctor. And I said, "Hey, I need to come see you Monday morning." And I even sent him a picture of my legs. My legs were they were swollen. They were, there's way more detail that I won't get into on the call because I want your listeners to, not leave your show from hearing all that detail. But they were swollen. And so he answered back and he said, "You should go to the ER now." I said, "No, I'm fine. I'll see you Monday morning." And then I called Ann, my wife, and said, "Hey, I made an appointment," thinking that she would be happy that I made an appointment. And it, instead of making her happy, which I think maybe it did a little bit, but it sort of freaked her out. And she ended up changing her plans and changed her flight plans and came back the next day instead of staying a few extra days. So I went to pick her up at the airport, sent her a text and said, "Hey, I can't walk in there because I just can't walk that far to go." And when she came out from luggage, I stood outside the car and she looked at me and she, like, sort of horrified, said, "We're going to the ER right now." I had put on about 70 pounds of fluid during this time frame, and that over the week or so up to that point, it had put on even more. Like, it was in my face. It was like I had basically no neck. My hands were swollen, and I was like, "No, I'm going to go tomorrow morning. We'll be fine." The history behind that is I've had several surgeries on joints and broken bones and things over the years. A torn rotator cuff in my shoulder, which literally the morning of that surgery, I was in the shower and I said, "It doesn't feel that bad. I don't think I need to go get the surgery." And that was pretty much this regular thing before every surgery in the past. It's the finger, it'll heal itself. It's going to, and it was a little bit of a joke. And I've got all the scars on my elbows and everything else to show all the surgeries. But that morning I told her the same thing. I was in the shower. I said, "I feel better today. I don't think I need to go." And then laughed at myself for saying that. But just to give your listeners some background behind me, that's how stubborn I am when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
So we got to the doctor's office, got checked in, got back to the examination room. Dr. Simpson walked in. He took one look at me and said, "You're in trouble." And I thought he was going to sort of make fun at how overweight I was at that point. And I even told him, I said, "Yeah, I don't know how I put on all this weight. I'm not eating. Like, if I try to eat anything, it comes right up." And the look on his face didn't get any better. So we went through a quick series of tests, blood work, an abdominal x-ray. And he came in and said, "I want to send you for a liver scan." And I just looked at him and I said, "Why do I need to have a liver scan?" And nothing is clicking with me at that point. And he just looked he said, "Have you noticed your skin?" And I said, "Well, I noticed that I'm seeping. There is literally fluid coming out of my skin." And he goes, "Well, yeah, that's part of the issue." And he looked at Ann and he goes, "Do you notice how yellow he is?" I'm like, "So I have jaundice?" Like, not putting that with any, like, "Okay, is there a pill for that? Like, just give me a shot and that goes away." And so, we had a few moments discussion and understood the seriousness of it. But you're still trying to rationalize that he's talking about you, even though all the evidence is right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is which there's some things about believing by sight and not by faith on that one. But I was looking at the evidence and didn't get I wasn't accepting it, just seeing it. Um, Later, a couple hours later, I completed the liver scan. Um, Asked the tech there, because you have to drink this dye, which I had asked him, please don't make me drink this. I can't hold it down. So the negotiation of like how much time I had to wait, that was a little bit of humor there, because when they told me that I had to drink it, wait 20 minutes and drink this other can and wait 10 minutes and then go in, I said, no, I'll drink this. I'm going to wait 2 minutes and then drink this one. And then you have to get me in there because I can't hold it down. They were like, well, it's going to take you longer than that. And I took this first thing that was like maybe a quart size, and it's going to take you 20 minutes to drink it. I killed it right there. And the ladies just looked at me, her eyes got real big, and I picked up the other jar and drank it right then. And I said, okay, you have like 5 minutes. You have got to get me in there. To the point where when I was done and I came out, I asked the tech, I know you can't tell me what you saw, but did you see everything that you needed to see? And she said, yes. And I said, where's the trash can? And she slid me a trash can. I stuck my head right in it and gave all the dye back. In the 2 or 3 minutes that it took us to walk out to the car, we got in the car. Dr. Simpson called. It came over the Bluetooth on the car. And he said, I need you to get to an ER right now. And I said, okay, which one? He said, well, pick one. And I said, no, we'll go to Memorial Regional. It's closer to the house. Why are we going? And he said, this isn't a final diagnosis, but from what I've just seen, you have end-stage liver failure and stage 4 kidney failure. And it just got silent in the car. Like you could have heard dust falling. And Ann and I she's driving and I'm sitting there going like that sound you just heard was what it was like in the car. And he even said, he goes, Bryan, are you still there? And I said, yes. What do we do? He's, well, I'm sending a specialist to meet you Memorial Regional for your kidney and your liver. He said, but we've got a lot of work to do. So we drove there, and on the good thing about your phone, your cell phone, and Google is that you can find information really quick. The bad thing about your phone and Google is that you can find information really quick, because the news I was finding and the information I was finding, none of it was good. And there was no good news when you have end-stage liver failure and stage 4 kidney failure, and you're just thinking you had a bad stomach ache, like that's so the acceptance of that is it's overwhelming. By the end of the night, so we get checked in and run through so many different tests, biopsies, endoscopies, MRIs, more blood work. By the way, this is the other thing for anyone out there that's ever dealt with liver failure. I have empathy for what most people assume you've done to yourself if you have liver failure, because those questions are rampant. Do you drink? How much do you drink? When was the last time you drank? I'm like, guys, what are you talking about? Like, what did my blood work say? Do I drink? Yes, we have an occasional glass of wine with dinner. But to finally having the liver specialist come in and make them stop asking me those questions because he's seen everything. And he's going, it's not, he goes, I know you didn't do this to yourself, but you just have to try to figure out what's going on. But those questions will wear you out when you're like, what are we talking about, folks?
Yeah.
So by the end of the night, probably 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, he comes back in to just say, I know you're tired. I know you're worn out. Here's where we are. The diagnosis is confirmed. It's end-stage liver failure. Your MELD score, which I'll confirm what that is 27. So the MELD score is a combination measure of a number of different factors, which just tell you how sick or healthy your liver is. The range for that is from a 6 to a 40. 6 is healthy liver. 40 is dead liver. When you get into the high teens, you start becoming a candidate for transplant. So mine was a 27. And at a 27, there's better than a 65 to 70% chance that you've got less than 90 days to still be here. So his words to me that night were, "You've got about 60 days," and it registered with me what he meant. Um, and there was a pause, and he said, "We have to keep you alive long enough to get you a new liver." And then he said, this was where a little bit of humor came in that night. He said, "Try to get some rest tonight." And for the first time all day, I laughed. I just like that's not going to happen. Um, so, uh,
Mm.
big transition right then, because Ann and I looked at each other. It'd been so hectic that day. Um, we'd held hands when we had a chance to, but there weren't that many times because I was in and out of procedures. And we looked at each other and we're like, well, it's we need to pray because we didn't know what else to do. So um, I couldn't get on my knees on the floor because my legs are so big I could barely bend them. So she kneels to the side of the bed and we just started asking God, like, okay,
Mm.
we don't know what's next. We're ready for it. Um, I started telling God what I was hoping was going to happen, um, but I also said, but I'm ready for whatever your plans are. Um, so um, that night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you're just laying there in bed with your mind's going a million miles an hour. Um, then with my kidney failure, they were they had cut any fluid, so my fluid intake was limited to just a couple of ounces a day at that point. Um,
Wow.
so if I got something to drink, it was like a cap full of water, just enough to take medicine with. So you're dealing with all that, and you're frustrated by that, and you're still trying to decipher all the news, um, and so I grabbed my portfolio, the notepad, and just started jotting down some things that I needed to take care of. I'm like, I've got to tell my partner Tim this. I've got to get him to do this, and it turned into uh, at the top of the page, I wrote down T minus 60, and it became sort of the I'm a planner. Financial plans. I did that for my clients. I needed a plan. I in my mind, like he told me, I've got about 60 days. Here are all the things I need to accomplish in the next 60 days. And it's just bullet point, day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way through. Um, some of them were simple things like I need to make sure that all my plans to make sure Ann's going to be taken care of are good, that the boys are going to be taken care of are good, that I've got things tied up with my business partner, that all the life things. And some of them were different also. Like I had things like who's going to take care of the yard? I mean, who's going to registrations are due on the car, like all this stuff.
Wow.
But it kept me busy, which was a good thing. So I was in the hospital for a week, in and out of test all week, got really frustrated being there. Um, by the end of the week, a new generalist came in that day. She was super nice, and I did everything I could to talk her into letting me go. I was like, I need to be out of the hospital. I've got all these other things to do. Um, they were worried that I wouldn't go to the follow-up doctor's appointments. And I'm like, I don't have anything else to do. Like I have this series of things that I have to accomplish in order to be on the transplant list. I'm going to do them. I'm going to go to all the doctor's appointments. But I'd rather lay in my chair at home than here in the hospital. For most of the folks listening, if they've been in the hospital for an extended period of time, it is not a place to get rest.
Sure.
Beeps, noises, screams, yells, like all the just noises. So, and not just during the day, right? So, all hours. And the folks in the hospital were great. There was nothing against them. I mean, nurses were great, doctors were great. But the generalist let me go. And she told my wife, she goes, look, at any point, if he seems dizzy or seems confused or anything else, you get him right back in here. And I'm looking at her going, I am right here. Like, why are you talking to her? At about 4 o'clock the next morning. So this was on that, this was a Sunday afternoon. So we went home and I ended up going to sleep that night. But at about 4 o'clock the next morning, um, my oldest son was holding me at the top of our back stairs because I was lost. I had gotten up out of the bed. I was wandering around the house. I didn't know it, but I was about to fall down the steps, and his bedroom was right there, and he came out. I was very happy that he is a big boy because he just gathered me, and uh, I started to come to a little bit. And my wife was, I knew she was going to take me back to the hospital. And I didn't want to go. So I lost that argument because I had a 22-year-old son that had a hold of me, and he was bigger than me. Um, and so back to the hospital that morning, um, severely dehydrated. Uh, Once they got fluids pumped back into me, I got argumentative again and wanted to go back home. So I literally refused to be admitted. So they begrudgingly let me go. So I've got an appointment tomorrow, and that's just kind of where I was. Um, I, I was fighting, but I wasn't fighting well. I wasn't following directions the way I should have. I should have stayed back in the hospital that day, but I didn't. But for the next 3 weeks, that's what it was. It was doctor's appointments every other day. Some days I would go into the office for a couple of hours, and I'd be worn out, and I'd have to come back home. So the interesting thing there was that I would text my business partner and say, "Hey, I'm leaving the house," and he would keep a stopwatch on how long because he knew how long it would take me to get to the office. And then when I got to the office, I'd tell Ann, "Hey, I'm at the office." And then when I leave the office, I'd tell Ann, "Hey, I'm leaving the office." Um, just in case I got dizzy. Like nobody was excited that I was driving myself, except I was driving myself. Um, so we get to the middle of October. Uh, Along the way, I have to go through these procedures once a week, almost, uh, where I'm having fluid drained off my abdomen. Um, it's not a painless process. Um, on a it's a very uncomfortable process. If anyone's ever had fluid drained off a joint, just imagine having a tube snaked into your abdomen, and you have at times double digit pounds of fluid drained off you. Um, so um, so there had been a day, it was the middle of October, I'd had blood work done that morning, had to go in and have fluid drained off. And then went home, and I was not feeling, I was getting worse. It was probably the 18th or 19th of October. The following Friday morning, my liver surgeon called, or doctor called and said, "Hey, this is his very technical medical term. He goes, your blood work sucks. I need you to come in for the weekend. We're going to redo all your medications." And so I didn't want to go back in, and he knew it. He goes, "But if you come in today, I'll get you back home by Sunday. But if you wait until Monday, you might be here forever." Well, not forever. You might be here for a longer time. And I said, "Okay." So I felt like I was managing my medicine okay, but Ann and I thought, let's go. And I think for me to go, "Yeah, let's go," was a big thing for her too, that I was feeling bad. So we get to the hospital that evening. That afternoon, I check myself in, go back for some tests. We wait around most of the evening for a room. And at some point that night, I finally fell asleep, which I didn't want to fall asleep because there was a medication I was supposed to take, and they hadn't given it to me, and I was a little bit worried about it. It was a medication that help your body get rid of toxins when your liver can't do it. And that was the problem with researching on Google, is that I knew if that didn't happen, there was a chance that your body can slip into a coma, because more toxins get to your brain and push oxygen out. And I was concerned about that. So I was very good at taking those medications. So as the night wore on and they weren't bringing me that medication, I started to get anxious. They finally checked me into a room, and it wasn't an individual room. It was a shared room. And I remember asking, there was this older gentleman in the other bed, and I said, "Do you mind if I turn the volume up on the TV? Because I'm trying not to fall asleep until I get my medication." And he's like, "I can barely hear. You can turn it up as loud as you want." So I did. I turned it up. Anne couldn't be in the room because it was past visitation hours. And I think that would have made a difference because she would have seen something going on. Uh, but I fell asleep at some point, and that was on a Friday evening. When I woke up, uh, I thought it was interesting because I was tied to the bed and I had tubes everywhere. And I didn't know why. So, um, and I had a nurse asking me if I knew what day it was, which I thought was also strange.
Yeah.
Like, if I go to bed on Friday and wake up, it's Saturday. Why do you need to know what day it is? And I said Saturday. And she said, no, you want to try again? And I said, is it possible that I slept till Sunday? And I said, okay, it's Sunday. And she said, no. And then I looked at Anne and I got upset. And I probably, said a few unchristian words at that point about, why don't you tell me what day it is? So I know. Um, it was Tuesday. And
Wow.
I was like, what do you mean? Like, and so I did not accept that news very well, because I'd gone to sleep back to the T minus 60. I checked in on T minus 32.
Mm.
And my brain went to right to what day it was on Tuesday. And to me, I lost days of things that I needed to do, to the point where I got so wrapped around that axle that it was the following afternoon. It was Wednesday afternoon before I finally was back to being Bryan and being like, receptive of information. There was one point where the nurse looked at me and said, you need to calm down or we're going to put you in a different room. And the room she meant was, a room with pads and no windows. So, um, so, so that's where I was at that point. The following week, I had an experience with a injection of a vitamin K supplement that stopped my heart. So, and that was an interesting experience of feeling it happen. Um, and I was in a position where I couldn't call out for anybody and I couldn't reach my nurse call button. And I was in the room by myself. Yeah. And so the interesting thing there is how many times, if you're in a hospital room, there's always someone in the hall or someone poking their head in the door of your room, like nonstop. And there was this moment where like I can see out the door and no one's walking out the door. So the last person that I saw somebody come to the door and I just sort of pointed at my chest. And I know this sounds crazy to people, but there were people that witnessed it happen. So I point at my chest and then I hear someone scream, "We need help." Um, the next thing was just having a bunch of doctors, opening my eyes and seeing a bunch of people stand over me, one of which had two paddles in his hand, and my chest hurt. So, um, but what had happened was that injection had caused me to have a regular heartbeat and it stopped beating. Um, and so Anne was the person that had stepped in the doorway. So, um, so that was an interesting moment because I was sort of at a loss because nobody else was coming by, and I just sort of leaned over as best I could, and I didn't know it was her. I just saw like a figure, and so even it was 20, 30 minutes later when everything had calmed down and everyone had left the room, and the hospital chaplain had come in. And it was kind of a funny story there. I'd come to and I saw the chaplain walk past me and turned my head and saw him walk towards Anne. And I told him to leave. Um, and, and he did. He walked on out of the room. And when everybody else cleared out, I said, "Hey, can you get the chaplain to come back in?"
Hmm.
And he came back in. And I said, "I didn't mean to be mean to you. It just wasn't time for you." And he laughed and he got it. I was like, "Dude, what? It wasn't time for you to be with like." And so we, again, finding humor and stuff because that chaplain he was awesome. I mean, I loved when he came by because, sometimes you just have these people that, when they pray for you, it feels different. And that guy he was pretty amazing. So, but we go on, we have over the next few weeks, one good day, one bad day, one good hour, one bad hour. We get into November, they put a permaport in my chest to start doing temporary dialysis to give one of my kidneys a break. The first day I had dialysis, I lost 8 pounds during dialysis. And that's how messed up my blood was. So
Yeah.
the second day of dialysis, I had a big issue with it. I had a massive bleeding issue. Lost a ton of blood. I ended up getting a bunch of transfusions that night. Um, and the um, next day airlifted down to Charlotte. So by that point, we were in the process of picking a transplant location. Um, well, we assumed initially it was just going to be MCV, right? VCU Medical Center, right there, one of the best. Um, my liver doctor did not have a referral agreement with VCU. They had some issues in the past, and I don't know well, I know what all of them were. I'm not going to bring them up here, but there's, it's one of those things that when you start digging into the world of medicine, it was like the bad side of the world of medicine.
Hmm.
We had a doctor who wanted to just do surgeries and take care of people, and demands that were put on his time for other things that he didn't want to do. So, but he was very good at what he did. So he tells us, along the process, if you want to go to MCV, I have to discharge you now. You need to go check into MCV, and you're gonna have to start the process all over. Or you can pick any other transplant hospital in the country. So through research,
Wow.
we picked CMC, which is now Atrium, down in Charlotte. And the plans were we were going to drive ourselves down here after Thanksgiving, check in, be on the transplant list, and just wait. November 9th was when I had the big bleeding incident. November 10th, an airplane with a couple of doctors and EMTs fly to Richmond, come get me from the hospital at St. Mary's, and fly me down to Charlotte. A number of days of just getting stabilized there. And along the way, feeling better, having a bad day, having good days. And then one day, a nurse who was always smiling, like always had a joke to tell us, walked into my room with a sad look on her face. And I just said, "What?" She said, "I don't know how to tell you this. We found a lump on your thyroid." And it's like the air just went right out of the room. Because that was going to be, like, of all the hurdles we'd gotten over, that would have been the one that would have stopped the whole thing. So everybody else was sad, but in that moment, I said, "Okay, so we have to go get a biopsy, right?" And she said, "Yes, it's scheduled." And I said, "Okay, let's go now." And she goes, "Well, it's about 45 minutes." And I said, "Well, great, let's go do it." And she goes, "Well, if it's bad news," I said, "I understand. Like, I don't want to hear that right now. Let's just go get this out of the way. We'll deal with it then." Um, so it's a teaching hospital. So they would constantly ask you, "Do you mind if students come in to observe?" And I was, absolutely, bring them in. So they do the biopsy, they take a piece out, and they go to do preliminary, the, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to draw a blank on it now.
Pathology.
Yeah, preliminary pathology on it. Thank you. And this team of students is just standing around, and it's awkward for them because I'm laying on the table and they're looking there. So I just start this, "Hey, where you guys all go?" Some of them were from Duke, some of them from North Carolina. So I start talking about football and basketball with them, have them laughing because I just start joking with them. And they all know where I am. They know my situation. My MELD score at that point was in the high 30s. So I'm in trouble. My kidney failure. I was at stage 5 kidney failure at that point, both kidneys. So, and here I am laughing on the table, getting a biopsy done on a lump on my thyroid. A big part of that, and we've talked about it a little bit, but my faith was so strong at that point that I knew where I was going one way or the other. I was like, I'm either going to walk out here healthy or I'm going to be healthy in another place. Right. So, so the doctor came back in, and when she walked in the door, she had this huge smile on her face. And like, it was like, it was almost like scoring the winning touchdown because all the students started cheering. And it was really cool. And it's like, how many times have you had people cheer because, well, at least you're not going to die from that. so so you have a chance at maybe surviving something else. So the Monday before Thanksgiving, they came to me and said, "Hey, you're stable enough. We're going to let you go for a couple of days." We had family that lived in the area, and they knew that. So We're going to let you go with them. You've got to come back tomorrow for blood work, but then enjoy Thanksgiving and then come back Friday. We'll check you back in Friday. You'll be on the list. It'll probably take 10 to 15 days, and there'll probably be organs available for you, which is a whole different thought process. Because in my situation, there wasn't time for me to go through trying to get people to serve as living donors. The hard part was I needed someone to die. And I know that sounds really cold to say it, but it feels cold to actually also think that and know that's what has to happen in order for me to make it, which wasn't something lost on me and parallels for other things as well. So we checked out that Monday. I came back Tuesday for blood work. Wednesday during the day, I felt awful. I mean, I was like contemplating getting Ann to take me back to the hospital. At 6:00 Wednesday afternoon, my phone rings, and I have all these numbers plugged into my phone. Like every kidney doctor in North Carolina that's worked on me, every liver person, every heart cardiologist that's come in to check on me, because that's just something else they have to do to make sure you're prepared, strong enough for surgery. And this number came across, and I didn't recognize it, so I didn't answer it. About 30 seconds later, Ann's phone rings, and my oldest son, who was driven down to stay with us at that point, picks up my phone. And at the same time, he's handing me my phone to say, "Dad, look at your phone." Ann is telling me, "Bryan, look at your phone." And I pick it up, and it's the voicemail to text, and I read the text, and it's, "Hey, this is the CMC Transplant Center. Please give us a call." A little bit of shock. So I called them, and they said, "Mr. Berry, we have your offer," which is how they present it to you. I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. Can you get here? We will be there in 20 minutes. So as the realization hits you, like, they are talking about having a liver and a kidney for me. So quick goodbyes to the family that was there. Head to the hospital. And then I'll tell you, when you show up, like, the hospital knows from the people who check you in, they're waiting on you. They're expecting you. And the way they greet you and start to cheer for you as you come in is they know what you're about to go through. And they're so excited for you. And it's pretty overwhelming, the care you get. So about 4 or 5 hours of just pre-op things. A good friend of ours, Doug Grote, who at that point was living in South Carolina, got up at 4:00 in the morning and drove up to pray over me before we went into surgery. But at 5:30 on Thanksgiving morning, I get wheeled in for a liver transplant. It's about an 8-hour procedure. Get through that procedure, get wheeled back to the ICU just to be kept under and kept sedated till Friday morning. I get wheeled back in for kidney surgery, successful kidney surgery, back to ICU in the middle of the afternoon. And I wake up at about 4:00 Friday afternoon. The humor part of that is great, and it's wonderful that it all happened. Back to humor. As I was getting wheeled into liver surgery, I asked the doctor if he, what's your estimate if all goes well? When should I expect to wake up? He said, probably Saturday morning at some point. I'm like, okay. He said, well, you seem disappointed. And I was like, well, I was just wondering if I'd wake up in time for the UVA Tech football game, which at that point they used to still play it on Friday afternoons. So, and he laughed and he goes, you'll have to watch a recording. And so, something told me when I woke up that it was Friday. It just inherently. And so when I finally got them to pull the breathing tube out, in a very raspy voice, said, "Is the UVA Tech game on?" And my wife laughed and she picked up her phone because I thought I heard football, and she'd pulled the game up, put it on her phone, and had it by my ear. So I was listening to the game. The other funny story with that was on the TV, there was a football game. There was a team in highlighter yellow playing against a team in burnt orange, like the solid color uniforms. And the play on the screen was oddly matching up with what I was hearing. But I got so confused because I couldn't understand. I'm like, okay, the burnt orange team has to be Virginia Tech, right? I probably asked 10 times before Anne finally just turned the TV off. Why is UVA wearing highlighter yellow uniform? So, and I could not figure that out to save my life. So she finally turned the TV off, and then but the kidney doctor came in and he was laughing. He's like, I think he's going to be fine. So I make it through. The recovery was great. We checked out 6 days later, and I walked out of the hospital. We stayed down for a few more weeks for post-op, and everything was, it's like, I've been so fortunate since then. When we came out of that, I got a lot of clarity about a lot of things in life that I needed some clarity on. And when you're laying in a hospital, thinking that, you may or may not make it, you have an opportunity to gain clarity about things. So there's some other really wonderful stories that go along with that. There were a lot of nights where I wouldn't go to sleep because the last time I'd gone to sleep, I didn't wake up for 4 days. So, so I would set my alarm on my phone for like 5 minutes. If I fell asleep, the phone would wake me up. It would drive Anne crazy in the hospital room. She would call me, "You stop setting that alarm." And I'm like, I just don't want to fall asleep. But there was a lot of time for prayer during those times. And I think that's where clarity came from on a number of things. So one of the things I did was sell my business. It's like, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do, but I know I'm not supposed to do this anymore. And it was extremely clear. My business partner at the time, who had been wonderful through the entire illness part, he was great. He was fantastic, checking on the boys, making sure things at our house were good while we were away. And he did. He wanted to buy the business, but he didn't want to buy the business. He's like, I want to, I want to keep your business, but I don't want to lose you as a business partner. And so our friendship grew so much closer during that whole process. And we still are to this day. We're still really good friends. So that didn't really stop the journey as to how we got to where we are now. We sail along. I get involved in some nonprofit networking and consulting work and leadership development work, which I had a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun doing for a number of reasons. To the point, fast forward to October of 2021, I am preparing to run a charity golf tournament for 4 of Richmond's finest nonprofits. I've got everything is set up. We're ready to go. It's the night before. I go into my garage, have a really good workout. For anyone who's run a golf tournament, it's not stress-free to do it. And when you try to run a charity golf tournament in October, it's probably the worst time of the year to run one because there are about 2,000 of them going on. So you're competing in an already small pond with a lot of other fish. So, but we get to that morning, or get to that night before, everything's set up. 4:00 that morning, the morning of the golf tournament, I get awakened, and I say, fortunately, I was awakened by something squeezing my chest very hard. And I thought I had indigestion, and not having learned my lesson from the transplant illness and all the signs that I needed help, I just tried to fix it. I walked, my office in our house was right next to our master bedroom. So I walked in there and just started doing some breathing exercises and drank some water and did some stretches. And for a minute or two, more than a minute, for several minutes, convinced myself that this was just a muscle strain or spasm, and I was getting better. The whole time, Anne is watching me. She's asking me questions. And about 45 minutes into this, she's standing in my doorway with her purse and her coat, like tapping her foot, and finally said, "If you don't come voluntarily, I'm about to call 911. You're having a heart attack." And as soon as she said that, it's like all the easy signs, like your left arm going numb, soaking wet, from not sweating to soaking wet in a split second. But what I had worked on was, if I can't get to the golf tournament, I need to let some people know. So I'd spent the bulk of that 45 minutes typing this long email to a couple of the other guys and saying, "Hey, you guys are going to be in charge. Here's where everything is." Um, all of the sponsorship signs and prizes and everything else were in the back of one of our trucks at the house. So I'm like, well, how am I going to get that there? So we're walking outside. My left arm's already numb. I'm soaking wet. She's making arrangements to get somebody to come over because another complicating fact, her mom is at our house, but her mom is on hospice care at that point. So she's called a friend to come over, told the friend what's going on. And we walk outside, and every guy that hears this is going to go, yep, understand this completely. I look at her and said, just follow me to the golf course and let me drop the truck off, and then you can take me to the hospital. And fortunately, she gave me a few seconds to think about what I had just said before she responded. And I just looked at her and said, please forget that I said that. That was really stupid. But in the moment, you're like, I'm a guy, I can do this. So we laughed later about it. At the moment, it was a pretty stupid thing to say. So I call my oldest son on the way to the hospital and say, hey, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to come get the truck, take it to the golf course. Tell him why. And he's very good in pressure situations, didn't get upset about it, just understood. Wanted to know if he could come to the hospital. I was like, no, it's still COVID restrictions. They're not going to let you back. Just go play golf. You're going to be playing with my college roommate. Everything's going to be fine. Just go there, get everything set up. We go to the hospital. I don't understand the severity of what I was going through at the time until I get back to the examination room, that was an interesting process too, because I walked down in this very friendly, young little desk attendant, so cheery, so like, oh, good morning, how are you doing? And I hand her my driver's license and my insurance card. It just, in a very quiet breath, say, I think I'm having a heart attack. And just as cheerful as she could be, she goes, oh, well, what's your name? and I just pointed at the driver's license, and then Anne comes through. She'd parked the vehicle and come sort of running through, and I just pointed at her and walked over to sit down. And she was telling her that this sweet little girl tells my wife, well, go have a seat. Somebody will be with you in a few minutes. And I had a big contraction right when she said that. And my wife says, he doesn't have a few minutes. He's having a heart attack. She kind of screamed it out. And as she was screaming that out, this this guy that could have been a middle linebacker for an NFL team comes out of the back, one of the nurses, and just comes sprinting to me and picks me up out of the chair and gets me back to the table. And in a matter of seconds, I've got nurses and cath lab people coming through the door and cardiologists. And before I know it, I'm back on the cath table, and the cardiologist is like, your LAD is 100% blocked. You've got all these other blockages. And you're mostly awake for that on the cath table. And I'm like, what do you mean? I get blood work once a month. I know where all these other numbers are. How can this possibly be happening? And that's a whole nother story. But I had a widowmaker heart attack. And at that moment, there's a lot of, okay, God, if it's now, I'm ready. But I didn't expect this. I felt great last night. Where'd this come from? So, getting through that, then, that afternoon, someone had loaned me their JMU tent for the golf course. And it's kind of a funny thing, but Mary let us borrow her tent. She needed it back the next day. And I promised her I was going to get her tent back Friday because they were going to a game on Saturday. No problem. We'll get it back to you. So Friday afternoon, she calls. She goes, hey, where's my tent? And I said, I'm sorry. I had a heart attack yesterday. I don't know where your tent is. I'll find it. She laughed. She goes, oh, that's a funny excuse. I was like, no, Mary, I'm really I really had a heart attack. But she had seen me the day before. It was like, what are you talking about? You had a heart attack. And so I've become a proponent for telling people hey, those two things. If you feel this, don't ignore it. There were a couple things, and I should have gone to the hospital right away that morning, because I had the cardiologist telling me if you'd waited another 5 minutes, this would have been a different thing. And So that, twice hearing these almost end of life stories and being kept around and still having this, okay, I'm still here. Um, so, um, so yeah, so those, going through those and now some of the things that have happened and I've experienced since then, um, I'm so grateful to still be here because some of the things we've had an opportunity to experience over the past 3 years, and as you and I've talked about a little bit that I can bring up over the past few months, um, uh, the way things have worked out for us, it's just thinking back on it, knowing how I felt during a couple of times and how I was about to. There were a couple of times I almost gave up, and I'm not usually a person to give up. Um, you know, I can think back to the bleeding incident during the dialysis when I told my wife that literally I looked at her and said, I think I'm done. Um,
Mm.
and my my nurturing wife who never has a harsh word for anyone looked right at me and said, "Suck it up and beat this." And she like screamed it at me. And it was a snap back into reality. It's like I needed that. Um, and I still when even those days now, if you get a little down or something goes against you, that's what I think back to. I think, you know, suck it up and beat this. So there are little things along the way that have just meant so much to me. Now,
Yeah.
fast forward to how we got to Charlotte, talking about the way other things work out. Do you want me to talk about that? Or
Yeah. Bryan, there is so much here, man.
yeah,
We'll come back to some stuff. So yeah, you might as well keep rolling. Wow. Wow.
there's a lot. I've had people go, that's an awful lot for a few years, and it is. Um, about a year ago, we came to Charlotte. Our boys moved down here 3 years ago to just further their careers and what they're doing. Um, and we were excited for them to move to Charlotte because I had some business clients down here. I'd taken some of the nonprofit consulting work down here. We had family and friends down here, so we were excited for them to have a little bit of a community down here already. Um, we enjoyed coming down to see them. We usually made it extended weekends every time we did. Um, and then last year, Easter weekend, we came down, and on the way home, we just had this discussion that we both felt like we were leaving home to go back home. We were like, we're going the wrong direction here. Um, and so we started praying about it then. Like, God, what is this? Are we, is this just us, or are you telling us something? Um, and we felt like Charlotte was on the horizon. We, in our own minds, thought it was like a 3 to 5 year thing. We got plenty of time. We're not in a rush. Um, but we did decide to start doing some downsizing things in our house because after 25 years in the same house and 34 years of marriage at that point, you've accumulated things, as you know.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of the stuff is your kids' stuff. And what you find out is that today's kids, who are adults now, don't want that stuff. They don't want to keep it. They don't want to have to deal with it. And we started having those discussions. So it's like, all right, let's 1 or 2 trips a week, either to charity or to the dump. Just, and it was going to take that long, right? Because we also had all of her mom's things as well.
Mhm.
Um, so we're coming on through the summer and we're starting to think more, well, maybe it's not 3 to 5 years, maybe it's 2 to 3 years. Um, in October, some some acquaintances of ours. I mean, we call them friends. We weren't close. We knew each other because we go to church together and we live in the same neighborhood. Approached us to look at the addition that we built on our house for Anne's mother. They have a special needs son, and they were considering building a first floor addition for him, and they just wanted to come see it. Uh, Somewhere along the lines during that discussion, um, now I will say, I'll back up because you know this, and it's a pretty good piece to add. As we were praying for God to help us, like know what we were doing here, we would usually end it, God, just make it obvious. And that just became God, make it obvious. So when we thought we had something to pray about, we were already thinking about it. So we just get together and say, God, you know what we're thinking about, make it obvious. Um, So that night they're there. We laughed when they called to come see the audition. We sort of laughed a little bit. We didn't read into it too much. We just thought, well, that's pretty interesting. By the end of the night, they were asking us if we wanted to swap houses. So we were like, well, that's pretty odd. But we didn't want to swap houses. And we told them, we were like, we don't want to swap houses. If we move out of here, we're heading south. Now, when I say south, one caveat to that is when I was in the hospital with the transplant and I did the T-60, one of the other things I did was write down 3 things that I wanted to focus on experiencing. Like these 3, what are these 3 main things that I'm going to fight for?
Yeah.
One was to see, I wanted to see my youngest son graduate from college. I wanted to see it, selfishly, I wanted to see at least one of my kids get married. And then the third, which was maybe a little funnier, was I wanted to get back to the Dominican Republic. And that sounds kind of funny, but Ann and I there's a special place in our heart for the Dominican, both the people and for vacation, but we've pictured living there at some point. Mm-hmm. So that statement, if we move out of here, we're heading south, could have meant one of 2 places for us.
Yeah.
So they said, hey, if you ever do get ready to sell this, can we be the first phone call? We're like, absolutely. So we sat around that night and we're like, let's just call. And they even said the same. They said, you don't have to do anything to your house. We love your house the way it is. It'd be perfect for us. Ann's mom was a pediatric physical therapist, and she worked with kids who were experiencing exactly what their son has. And that wasn't lost on us either, because that night, Ann said, Mom would be so happy. And so I was like, well, I've lost all negotiating power now because you just said that. So, but we laughed because we kept saying, God, make it obvious. And it was just like, this seems so obvious. So we talked to our real estate agent. She gave us the do nothing price. And I called him one day and said, hey, we are thinking about selling it. Here is the do nothing price. And it was a very simple, they said yes. We said yes. How are we going to do this? The idea was that they were going to stay in their house till the end of June, or till June of this year to get through the school year, which was fine with us. It gave us plenty of time to come down and find a house down here. We signed a contract on January 1st. A week or 2 later, we get an update from our real estate agent. Hey, they want to know if you guys would be interested in moving at the end of March. So we just laughed. We looked at each other and said, we would feel wrong saying no because we've continued to ask God to make it obvious. This is pretty obvious. So we said yes. And it sped things up quite a bit. So, and then we knew, like, okay, we're not supposed to get a house right now. So we are in this wonderful apartment down in South Park, which it's hard to imagine. We laughed at each other going, what do you mean? Like, what are we thinking about going to an apartment? But we're in this great place. For those who are watching, this is part of the co-working space in my apartment building. It's a wonderful place. It's in a great area. We're in this very walkable neighborhood, and the relationships that we've either rekindled or started in the past almost 3 months now that we've been down here have just been so obvious that we were supposed to come down and make or rekindle. And some really cool things are starting to percolate down here. So we just feel like all this has worked in ways that you can't see when it's happening. You can't, like, I don't know why this is happening, but hey, we're here. Let's go. And we're at this point now where we still don't know exactly how it's all going to filter out, but we're confident in knowing that it's being worked out. And so we just continue. It's, the adage we use is we continue walking through doors until they close. And if those doors close, we just look for the open door. And that's the way it's working out is fantastic. I've had people ask me if I ever got mad at God, especially during the transplant time, because there were a couple of days where we would go from good news your blood levels are stabilizing, to within an hour, your blood work has gotten to the point where we've taken you off the transplant list. Um, and so,
Oh,
um,
wow.
so there were times when it was just the news would whiplash you, and it was exhausting. Um,
Mm.
so and then we would have these times down in Charlotte where I'd be feeling a little bit bad about myself, but um, we were in a trauma unit, and so once an hour, probably on average, a helicopter is landing on the roof, like one story above me, and I know that someone's coming in worse than me. And that was always a reality check for me. Now, there were a couple times where people would argue that no, they weren't worse than you, Brian. Your MELD score was a 40. That at the end, so your liver was completely dead. You were pretty bad. Like, yeah, but these people were coming in. I mean, um, we had amazing things happen from people reaching out to our family during the entire time. One of them was gift cards. Our church and people from around the country um, just would find out about us, and we were getting these $10 and $15 Starbucks and Chick-fil-A and Panera, and I'm not kidding you. They were some people would drop them off at our church uh, because they knew that Greg English, who was there, would get them to our boys because that's who they were really making sure had them. So, which is overwhelming to know that people are doing that for you. But as Ann and I were sitting in the room one day in Charlotte, a helicopter landed, and the person being brought in was a woman who was on her bike and got run over by a tractor and trailer. And she was touched. She was really banged up. And her mother flew in from out of state, brought nothing with her. It was emergency, hop on the plane, go. So um, as we were sort of hearing what was going on, Anne was walking through the hall and just met the mother and came in and told me about her. And I looked at her, and she was digging in her pocketbook already. I didn't have to say anything, but just having the ability for Anne to go give this lady, look, take these, go get yourself coffee and food, and um, and and also be able to share with her that my husband and I are praying for your daughter, and just having her go, your husband's almost dying there. What are you doing praying for us? So or how can you be doing that? So there were opportunities to continue to pour into others, even though we were going through. But those opportunities were as much created by other people taking care of us. So it was just this natural thing. Like we're normally people who would try to do stuff for others anyhow, but like we didn't even have to try because so many other people were just making it so easy for us to do. And then I would be, yeah. And there were times people would say, "Did you ever get mad at God?" I was like, "No, of course I didn't get mad at God for this." But I will say that there were times where the argument was very one-sided. So I would tell him, "I'm not mad at you, but I disagree with this." So, which I had this complete acceptance that he was okay with that because he was okay that I disagreed. But he was still there, ready to talk whenever I wanted to talk, right? So, so there may be a little fuzzy theology there, but but I will tell you that I had more regular conversations with God during that time. Now that make it so easy, like now it's not a thing to think about. I need to stop and pray for that because it was like probably one of the biggest things. I got a lot of things out of it. One of the bigger things was like I'm always talking to him. And so it's not a stop and think about it thing. There'll be times when Ann goes, "Hey, we need to pray about that." I'm like, "I've been praying about it all day." But yeah, but absolutely, we can stop here and do it together. It doesn't mean I always listen. I mean, human. I still think, no, I'm not sure you're right about that, guy. But and then laugh at myself and go, "No, sorry. Thank you for letting me get through that." Um, so I think I'm thankful for the sense of humor that he gave me. Um, Sometimes he probably goes, "I gave you too much of a sense of humor, Brian." So, but I'll tell you the things that we do now. I think I see more clearly. Uh, how do I want to phrase this? Um, I don't question if I think God is moving me a certain way now. Um, I think I have more clarity on that to know that, okay, yes, this is going to lead to something good and worthy. So this is the right thing to go do, as opposed to going, I'm not sure if that's the right thing or not. I don't think I see those things. Um, I don't think I question things as much as I used to. And I mean, I grew up in a Christian family. I accepted Christ when I was young. Of course, coming to your rebellious 20s and 30s, you go through that stuff. Maybe not 30s, um, but where you question things like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? I never questioned. Like I never once said why. Uh, even with the liver and kidney diagnosis, it was never why. It was always what's next. Like, what are we going to do now? And we even like it's one of the things we say to each other. A couple other little catchphrases that Ann and I have now is, "Okay, what's next?" Um, or the other thing we used to say, um, "What else could possibly happen?" That phrase will get something thrown at you in our house now. Um, it's the phrase was replaced by "Why not?" Because I think we're equipped to deal with it, and that's how we approach it. It's like, okay, well, why not? Um, and so there have been some rough things that have happened along the way. It's not like the past 6.5 years have been smooth. There have been a lot of, and even today, I would tell you that there are things that we wonder about, but I think we wonder about them in a way that's not questioning them. It's just, okay, why not? So, because we see all the good, and we see where these things are going. Um, we don't know exactly where it is, but we're just going. So, um, yeah, so that's where we are. And I hope this is,
Wow.
I hope that I've made sense in some of this. I think sometimes my brain wanders a little bit, and it's
Now, this has been very, very, very clear. Let me do a quick recap here because you have covered significant ground. So 2018, you are diagnosed with end stage liver failure and stage 4 kidney failure that progresses over a period of days and weeks to ultimately stage 5 kidney failure and essentially a liver score of 40 out of 40, meaning it's game over, essentially. And you are blessed with a donor for replacing both of those organs. And you recover from that in roughly a handful of days in terms of being discharged from the hospital. And then naturally many things and recovery post-op. And approximately 3 years later, you have a heart attack, a full-blown legit heart attack in October of 2021. And you survived that as well, which leads me then to the question of, Bryan, why do you believe you are still alive?
Yeah. So I got asked that after the transplant, and I would tell people very honestly, I'm not sure. Along with, but I know I'm here for a reason. Not sure of the reason. Um, After the heart attack, there were a lot of other things going on around the heart attack, and the heart attack also provided some additional clarity on what I wasn't supposed to do. It wasn't I was doing anything bad. It just provided clarity with who am I supposed to be doing things with. And I think maybe I was doing some things with with one or two people that just I probably wasn't supposed to continue doing things with. And I wasn't, nothing wrong was being done. It was just sort of a unequally yoked type relationship with the business. And so the acceptance of what I'm feeling led to do and why I think I'm still here um, was has been a little. It's not been comfortable, but I don't think we're guaranteed comfort. I mean, I think we're guaranteed an opportunity to things, um, but we had a certain comfort level prior to the transplant. Running a successful investment advisory practice and doing a lot of things that as a family and for other people and our pathway for that's a little different now, but purpose feels much higher. So for me, I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm passionate about things being done well for the right reasons. Um, what that's led to and where I think we're heading with this is I never pictured myself uh, being fully in the nonprofit world. Right? Um, and if I did, I never knew exactly where. Um, what I like to do, though, and be a part of is I like doing things that advance kingdom things. Right. And so you and I know what I'm talking about there. Um, what I've found is there is a nonprofit down here that serves faith-based nonprofits. And so I think that, and I don't know if this is where it ends up going or not. Where I am right now is starting to do whatever I can to help this nonprofit that helps other faith-based nonprofits succeed. And I believe I have a certain skill set that I could add to that to be additive to it and make that happen. Now, from a financial standpoint, it's not the same. Um, but I haven't been as worried about that. And I don't want to say that my wife's been worried about it either, but it's clarifying that picture is where probably some of the fuzziness might be. But I'm also confident that that's all going to work out. So I think I have an opportunity to, and I think I'm being led to. I'm 58. I've been around for a while, and I have a lot of different experiences in life, and I've been through some things, as you've heard. I mean, but
that's putting it lightly.
And so, being able to come alongside people in a number of different ways to pick them up, to encourage them. In the case of there are a lot of nonprofits that do a lot of good things, both faith-based and secular, and but in that world, there are a lot of them that aren't run well, and there's a lot of reasons they're not run well. And you have extremely well-meaning founders of those who are so passionate, but don't build good teams around themselves. And so, if they don't take care of that process and put good teams around themselves, they're not going to be sustainable. And the world's going to end up missing out on what they can do well. It makes a difference. So where I think I'm being led is to be a part of an organization that can help that, and help sustain organizations and people that are doing things to make the world a better place. So, so that's where I think this is all. And I also think that's why we're in Charlotte, because there is a spirit for that down here. And it's not that it doesn't exist other places. It's just that I haven't experienced it other places the way I've experienced it here. And again, that doesn't mean it's not in a lot of other places. It's just I haven't been everywhere. Right. So, I think there are so many reasons. Well, even for Anne, it's important that for me that she also feel like this is where she's supposed to be. And watching these two things sort of work together hand in hand, again, it hasn't been our timeline, right? So there are things that I wish had happened much sooner, and some things that I'm surprised have happened as soon as they have. But at where we are in our life and in our belief system and everything else, we are at a point where we laugh about those now, but we laugh because they're like joyful things, right? So, and it doesn't mean that life's without stresses. There's, you and I will both probably get stressed over something or have some situation happen 10 minutes after this call's over. Um, but knowing that those things are, those are temporary things that we just don't let get in the way of good things, right? So, does that make sense? So that's the best I can give you for what I think is purpose here. I don't know the end game. Well, a funny thing about end game, if you don't mind me sort of going back just a little bit, as we're about to walk into the operating room, or be wheeled in for me, back on Thanksgiving Day 2018, the liver surgeon, the head liver surgeon that day, who I became close with the entire teams, like all the teams. But the head liver surgeon was the last one I was talking to as we were getting wheeled in. And when he came down that morning, he looked at me. He goes, "Well, how are you feeling?" And I said, "I'm feeling great." He goes, "You look really happy this morning." And I said, "Well, I am happy." And we'd had a spiritual and theological discussion prior to that. And I was very happy with his belief system for where I was heading, what I was about to go through. And he goes, "Are you happy because you're getting a new liver?" I said, "Well, I'm happy about that." I said, "But I'm happy about something else." And we were touch and go, and there were a lot of days where it's like, we're not sure. And he goes, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "Wherever I wake up, it's going to be great." And he looked at me. He knew exactly what I meant. He said, "Well, okay." So it was like, and then he said, "Do you mind if I pray over you?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." Then my surgeon wants to pray over me before we go in. Yeah, I'm all about that. So the confidence level with going in, and the comfort level is as comfortable as you can be. Um, Going in where you're not, it's not 100% guaranteed you're going to make it out of this thing, right? So, but just having this, even saying goodbye to Ann that morning was, see you in a little bit. So it was like, we're good. But I was extremely happy that morning, extremely confident that wherever I woke up, it was going to be great. So, so I think confidence in that, not that it's ever been low, but it couldn't be any higher. Like I have this discussion with some people where it's like, I am 100% convinced of this. So, and I have some experiences along the way to sort of back that up. That's a whole different discussion if you want to have that. Yeah. That's probably, might get some weird looks if I share some of those.
Yeah. Right on. Well, man, thanks for sharing so much about all of that. We wrap each of these conversations up with two main questions. The first of which is, was it coincidence or God, Bryan?
I try not to laugh when I answer that question. Because I've had this conversation with a few people along the way. Again, without question, 100% this was God for me through the entire thing. There are no coincidences with how all of this has happened, including up to the point as to where we are now and things that are going on in our life now. This path started way more than 6.5 years ago, and I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I think you and I both know that it started a long time ago. But over the past 6.5 years ago, I didn't know I'd be here today. But now looking back, it's like so obvious how we got here. And so yeah, the God thing is knowing that wherever we are 6.5 years from now, like I know that it's all put together. So yeah, there's zero coincidence. And I have more stories about us being down here and things that have happened down here, which would be a whole nother story, including, I mentioned earlier to you, including ties to the first church that we visited when we were down here, and Ann walking into the church and going, "I've been here before." and the whole story about,
No
and she
kidding.
had been years ago, for another reason, but it was just, those things happen, not daily, but often, not coincidental stuff. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, Bryan, the final question that we ask is, how has your life changed as a result of everything that you've described? And you've certainly alluded to some of that along the way, but tell us a bit more. How has life changed?
More than what I've told you. I think the way I see things and the way I appreciate things is probably different now. I part of this is probably age as well. Um, I laugh because I stop and take in, like, smells. I take in sunrises. I take in sunsets. And for me, it's, I think I probably wore people out with posting pictures of sunrises, um, because but for a while, seeing them was like, it was such a gift to see the next one. And so there's so much appreciation to see in the beauty of that. Um, and waking up, and the commonality is waking up like every morning. Okay, you kept me here for another day. What do you have for me? And so the approach to the days has changed, because it's not, oh, here's another day. It's, all right, you kept me around for another one. What do you have for me today? And it's the appreciation of, not just ending the day, but trying to figure out, where can we get to see the sunset? And that's down here. It's great because we go upstairs to the top of the building. But I think, like, I've always enjoyed meeting new people, but now it's like excitement to go meet new people. It's excitement to figure out, like, here's someone else's story. Um, how can I connect them to something they're trying to get to? And being thankful for the opportunity to have, like, another day to do that. So, and it's not that I necessarily wasn't like that before, but now it's just so much more intentional. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, I think just being way more appreciative for everything. I still have all the shortcomings and everything else. I can't shake those, but I try to be more aware of them. So, and just more great.
Sounds like some of the corners got rounded.
100%.
The process.
A lot of them got rounded off. I think the bigger thing is just the appreciation for things. So, yeah. And
life.
Appreciation.
And life.
That's what I think.
That's what you're meaning.
It's thankfulness and gratitude are two huge things. Again, not that I wasn't before, but then much more intentional. And I also realize it. Like, it's those moments where you realize you need to stop and give thanks for this, as opposed to thinking, I'll give thanks for it later when I have time. Realizing that that's no longer a thing. Like, if I need to give thanks for, or there's times where I need to call somebody, or something that's, it's hard for me to put that off now, because September 17th, 2018, I knew I had 20, 30 more years. September 18th, it's like, I got 60 more days. October 14th, I'm going to run a golf tournament, and I've got all this stuff to do over the next 3 months. If I'd waited 5 more minutes, I wouldn't have had the next day. So that's a big thing now. Yeah.
Bryan, thank you. There is no question that people that hear this are going to be blessed. I really appreciate you sharing this, man.
Well, you're welcome. Eventually, I'll have a book written for some of this. I think I've written 5 books, and I don't have one out yet. So, I told somebody the other day, I think I probably got 500 or 600 pages of things written down, and it's like, people keep asking me, "Hey, are you going to write a book about this?" I'm like, "Yeah, eventually." So maybe one day I'll have a book to send you.
Oh, I would love to read it. Bryan, genuine thanks, man. It's been a real
Thanks so much for having me.
Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for His glory. When You Look is powered by stories just like this, and yours could be next. Go to whenyoulook.com/be-a-guest or use the link in the description below. Drop us a comment and share this episode with somebody that needs it. Until next time, thanks a bunch for listening and watching, and God bless.